Hi everyone, this is Emily Leiphart here for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video I'm sharing a trio of mini slim cards using the Cattitude Alpha dies and mini slim card bases from the Mini Slim Essentials release. Just playing with these Cattitude Alpha dies gave me so many ideas, and I want to share more videos with you using these fun dies. Let's have a closer look at all the supplies I'll be using in this video. Here are the Cattitude Alpha dies. The letters are about an inch tall. They're big enough to be the star of the card and also small enough to mix and match with so many existing products. I'll be pairing these up with the Simple Strips Snarky from the previous release as well as the Simple Strips Asymmetrical die. I thought it would be fun to use these adorable cats from the Cattitude clear stamp set. Their faces work so well with the Snarky strips. I also have a rainbow assortment of side fold mini slim card bases. You can also get these card bases in a top fold version. Due to their slim outline shapes, I'll be using the Tailored Expressions sticky sheets with these die cuts. It'll be faster and less messy than using liquid glue to stack all the layers together. I want to stack 3 layers of cardstock to give these letters some dimension on the cards, so I cut strips of sugar cube cardstock and attach strips of sticky sheets to the back. Then I place the letters on the top side of the cardstock so the sticky adhesive is on the back of the letters and run them through my die cutting machine. I cut 2 layers of white letters and use the release paper to stack them so they're ready to adhere to the cards. When I remove the outline from each die cut letter, you can see that another version of the same letter remains. This means that the Cattitude Alphas are really a 2-in-1 set of dies. You get an outline alphabet as well as a small solid version, and it would be so fun to mix and match these two sizes in all sorts of colors. After I've stacked the 2 sugar cube layers and the top layer for all the letters in each card respectively, here are the results. I used glitter silver cardstock for Martini, Oreo cardstock for Monday, and Pea Pod Cookie Monster and Jelly Donut for Fun. For my first card, I'm going to use the Bokeh layering stencil to create a background in the same 3 colors as the letters. This set comes with 3 stencils, so that works out perfectly with the colors. I use a rolled up piece of washi tape to hold my panel in place, and then tape down the first stencil. All of the stencils are labeled 1, 2, and 3 to make them easy to use. I'm going to start with Pea Pod ink on stencil 1. I'm using the coordinating blender brush to ink up the stencil, and since I still want the Cattitude Alpha dies to show up on this background, I will use as light a hand as possible. I go back over the edges so the color is a little more saturated around the edges of the panel. I switch to stencil 2 and use Sprinkles ink with my light blue blender brush. I'm always excited to remove the stencils to see how each layer looks. For the third and final stencil, I use Jelly Donut ink with the purple blender brush. You'll see the results of all the stenciled backgrounds when I assemble the cards. Moving on to the second card, I'm using the Mini Slim Rectangle Masking Stencil with the Set the Scene Clouds stencil strips. These clouds are not numbered since it's personal preference as to which shape you want to use and whether you want to repeat them or use the same shape over and over. I'll be using all 3 layers with the 3 gray inks. I start at the top of the panel with Sea Salt ink, and I'm using my gray blender brush for this background. I switch to the second cloud strip with Earl Grey ink, and finish the third cloud strip with Poppy Seed ink. I go back over the top and bottom edges of the rectangle with Sea Salt ink to make sure there's a full rectangle border on this panel. For my third card, I'm using one of the Masking Stars stencils and repeating that in different areas of the panel. I want these stars to appear as if they're falling from the top of the panel, so I'm placing the stencil as such. Since I used the rainbow's 3 ladder colors on the Fun card, I want to use the first 3 rainbow colors on this card. I start with Lemon Meringue and the yellow blender brush. I turn the stencil 180 degrees and use Sweet Potato ink with my orange blender brush. Then I flip the stencil on its vertical axis and blend with Watermelon ink and my red blender brush. Now I will stamp the Simple Strip Snarky in my mini Misty stamping tool on both sugar cube cardstock and Oreo cardstock, so I have both white and black options for my cards. I use Oreo ink to stamp the Snarky strips on sugar cube cardstock, and then I use sugar cube ink to stamp them on Oreo cardstock. I ink up both versions twice to get a clear impression. Before applying the pigment ink, I use powder tool so the white embossing powder doesn't stick elsewhere on the cardstock. After heat setting, I can die cut all the strips at once using the Simple Strips Asymmetrical die. As with all simple strips, the coordinating dies are so easy to line up because they have the little stamped squares that line up with the die. It's just so satisfying to see all those strips come off the cutting plate. Now it's time to stamp the cats on the stenciled panels. I'm obviously going to use the cat holding a martini for the martini card. I'm using the letters to help me gauge positioning of the stamp, then I prep the stamp by rubbing my palm on it. I do this with all new clear stamps, and it helps remove the coating after manufacturing so that the ink adheres better and more evenly. I apply Oreo ink and stamp it on the panel. I use a ruler to make sure the letters are adhered to the card straight and spaced evenly from left to right. I did think about using the letter A die cut and leaving the center out so that the cat's face would still show up, but it was best without it. I also placed the letter R a little further than it would be if the letter A had been in place, just to accommodate the martini itself. The final result looks a little like martini, but that's pretty punny too. Now my first card is done. I love how it just so happened that a star ended up on the cat's nose, and I love how the alpha dies look in glitter cardstock. For my second card, I adhere the panel to a sea salt panel for a subtle border. I again use a ruler to help me line up and center the fun letters. Whereas I left the glitter letters hollow on the first card, I felt like the busy bokeh background made it necessary to use the negative pieces from the sugar cube layers to fill these letters. I used the rubber cap for my tweezers to push the pieces in place and make sure they were solidly adhered to the panel, which I adhered to a lemon meringue card base. At this point, I thought the card was done, but I will later add a small stamped sentiment to it using the Cattitude stamp set. For my third and final card, I'll be using the grumpiest cat in place of the letter O in Monday. Again, I do a general mock-up in the Mini Misty stamping tool to gauge positioning of the cat. I prep it and stamp it on the panel with Oreo ink. Using the ruler, I line up and adhere the die-cut letters as well as the inside pieces of the letters D and A. For variation on future cards, it's also possible to exclude these small pieces for an entirely different look. Once again, I use foam sticky strips to adhere the Snarky strip to the panel. This particular panel won't need a second layer since it has its own stenciled border. I simply attach it to a Cookie Monster card base and the card is done. I really love this one with all of its neutral colors and the blue card base. It all goes so well with the Snarky sentiment. Going back to the fun card, I'm going to stamp the little sentiment "Dope" on an angle over the letter F. This way, all three cards feature the Cattitude stamp set. Here's a review of all three cards featuring the Cap It Off Alpha Dies, Snarky strips, and Cattitude stamp set. The Martini card also features the Masking Star stencil. The Fun card also features the Bokeh layering stencils. And the Monday card features both the Mini Slim Rectangle and Set the Scene Cloud stencils. I hope you're inspired to create with the Cap It Off Alpha Dies and so much more. I can't wait to see what you come up with. You can find all of these products in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. I'll see you again soon, and thank you so much for watching.